Hello, and thank you for contacting Wave Support. I see from your request that you're struggling converting this patient to a multifocal wave lens from a soft lens. Well, if we look at a couple things, we'll first talk about these topographies. As you know, if we look at your topography, we don't have a lot of great data out here, and as you know, sometimes it's hard to capture that data. And we got quite a bit of steepening here in the zone that you were able to capture. So one of the challenges I think you're running into, if we talk about the right eye for a moment, when you extrapolate this lens out, you end up with Wave looking at an artificially steep cornea out here. My guess is if you could get this full data, it would probably be much bluer out here, probably a lot flatter. So that would probably account for why Wave thinks it's steeper out here, so it's creating a little steeper lens. We'll talk about that in a moment. If we look at your left eye, probably similar issue. And as you know, you get the steep ridge up here in the superior cornea. And if you picture that putting that lens on there, that lens is probably going to slide right down this here. If you picture like the side of the mountain, it's going to slide right down the slope and want to decenter inferiorly. So that'll account for some of your fitting issues. And that will also actually probably account for your over-refraction problem on the left eye where you get that extra minus 150. The lens probably slides down and you're probably getting, if you look at the lens itself, I'll slide it up here in this front anterior zone. If it slides down, this pupil probably slides out of the visual axis, and you're actually getting the over-refraction over this add zone over here. So my guess that's where that happens. So if we can get this lens to center better, you'll probably notice that your over-refraction changes a bit. So with that said, let's go back and look at the design. Oh, before we talk about that, you mentioned you're getting some filming of the lenses also. A couple thoughts with that. It could just be a poor wettability from surfacing when they made it, so obviously you could try cleaning it well with a Serene cleaner or a Low-Bob cleaner or even Miraflow if you have any of that laying around. Cleaning well with that. I've also noticed some of these patients when I have these issues where it just seems like they want to film up on the patient after wearing them. Quite often that suggests either some underlying meibomian gland dysfunction coupled with maybe lens that are too snug on the end. It seems like a lot of our patients just gunk those things up. So we're going to hope that if we can make some adjustments in the fit here, that'll reduce the tendency for that to happen. So let's go back to this right eye. You mentioned it's rather steep and you're concerned about centering. So one way to get this lens to center better is to go larger, and you can flatten it out a little bit. One of the easy things that I find to flatten it out is quite often just switching from axial mode over to tangential. You may recall that axial tends to represent the central topography quite nicely, but not quite as accurate in the peripheral area, whereas tangential tends to look very nicely at the peripheral retina and not as accurately at the central retina. In the end, you get about a lens that's probably about a half diopter flatter in general. So quite often I like to use a tangential design sometimes if we're concerned about lenses being kind of tight or looking a little too steep on the eye. So basically switch over here to tangential. I went a little larger, and I've mocked up a lens here just for a second. The other thing you can also do to get this back surface of the lens, if we go back and look at your design, I'll switch back over to axial. We want to get this tear layer to match to very uniform along here. You want to get this back surface lens to look a lot like the front surface of your topography. This is very close, but if you really want to accentuate that, quite often I find if you just put a little bit of back surface asphericity in the lens using the S factor down in the corner, just like a minus 0.05. What you'll notice when you put that in and click current settings redesign under tools, you'll get a lens that fits very nicely in all the different meridians. It's going to match the front surface of that topography very closely. In the tangential mode, you'll probably not be quite as tight on that eye as you were before. So I think that'll give this lens a better chance of fitting well. Make sure you leave enough edge clearance there for the tear pump. If we look at the left eye, similarly you'll notice that in your design, we look pretty nice here. Here you have some areas where you get some bump ups here, and quite often what I'll try to do in these designs, I'll try to look at that placement of that red dot, and sometimes I'll try to maybe center it a little bit on this in the center part of that elevated area. So I might tend to bring this one down a little bit here to a little smaller back surface OZ. And once again, I mocked up a little sample lens here. I went to a little larger diameter. I moved the red dot a little bit more towards the center, a little closer in there. I set around 5. You probably, there's not specific area that you need to, but I try to set it there. I went to a little back surface asphericity, the optical zone, switched to tangential and redesigned it. And what you notice now is you get a lens that's, if I click on it over here, get a lens that pretty much closely matches in all the meridians. And if you look over here in that bottom view, that back surface of the lens pretty much matches, mirrors the front surface of the topography. So now you get a very closely fitting lens. You want to make sure you have enough tear exchange by keeping that edge lift up. But I would anticipate this lens would probably want to match the cornea a little bit more closely, or have a better chance of matching it than yours. And of course, keeping it larger will help that lens center more. So you want to keep it as large as you can get away with on these irregular corneas. So by doing that, I think you should get a lens that centers better, that may clear up your weird over-refraction. Again, I think your over-refraction on the left eye is that the lens probably decenters, and you're probably picking up some needed minus over the ad that the person's probably looking through. So with those adjustments, I hope you'll find that helpful, and I wish you well with this case. Thank you for contacting Wave Support, and have a great day.